Good morning, everybody. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Santa Barbara Water Commission. Water Commission for Thursday, January 17th. And roll call. Do you want to...
Chair Jordan is absent. Vice Chair Burney.
Present.
Commissioner Keller is absent. Commissioner Keelborn.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Changes to the agenda?
Yes, Vice Chair Burney, we have a few changes. First, item 5B. Just a small change there. We're actually moving up when we plan to take that to council. We had been planning for the 12th, February 12th, and we're actually going to take it to the council on January 29th. We wanted to get the letter to the Board of Supervisors before their February 5th meeting where this will be discussed. Item 5C, minor change on that one. The county has retitled it, and it is an update to the 2019 instead of update to 2018. And then another larger, I guess, issue across the board. My mistake on this. The Water Commission, and the role of the Water Commission is to recommend to council, and so some of the actions in here are to approve, and I think that's misleading. So what I'd like to propose is, other than the meeting minutes, all the rest of these items that have approved by them should be recommend, and we'll do a better job in the future of catching those.
No, they could be approval of staff recommendation, which is the recommend.
Right, yeah. So just make it clear there.
Great, thank you. I don't see any public comments for items not on the agenda. So moving on to the consent calendar, I think we're going to pull the meeting minutes since two of us were not here for the last meeting, but I think, Dave Davis, you had a comment there?
Madam Chair, I have a comment on a question and comment on item A, the meeting minutes, and then a question on item B, the letter of support for the assignment of to CCWA for the state water. On the minute itself, on a second page, under item B, under commission comments, it says of the options presented, the commission majority favored option 1. Well, as you know, I was the minority on that, but we continued the item, and we continued the item for more information to allow it to come back, and then everybody basically would be able to weigh in. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think that we actually had essentially an action where we took the majority approved this or thought of that. I thought we had continued the whole item. So when it does come back, I would think that that particular bullet should be eliminated, because we'll come back, and who knows, I might even like option 1 when it comes back, because we're going to come back for full discussion to the full board.
Yes.
Okay. And then on item B, my question is maybe to Kelly or Joshua. That is, I've heard secondhand that some of the other agencies, vis-a-vis Goleta, aren't supporting this anymore. And I'm just curious, do we know anything more about where the other South Coast agencies are on this issue?
Commissioner Davis, as far as I know, Montecito Board considered it, and I didn't hear the outcome, but I was under the impression they were still supportive of it. Carpinteria had a discussion at their board, and I believe the concern that they raised was regarding the voting power.
Yes.
At CCWA. So I didn't hear that they were for or against the contract reassignment. They were just not going to be sending a letter at this time.
What I heard was that Goleta has submitted a letter to the county asking them not to do this on the basis of the voting rights issue. So I'm not conversant with the voting rights issue question of the North County areas having more weight, and particularly Santa Maria, on these kind of questions. So again,
it's definitely a consideration. The CCWA board, it's Santa Maria has most of the voting power. With one additional agency, they can swing the vote. That's always how it's been. That's always been in our GPA. So this contract reassignment does not change the voting power that's already been in place. It was really established based on who pays for the
Yeah, no,
the
I
cost of
understand. I
water.
understand that. I guess what I had heard, this is coming from county people, that Goleta basically is saying they want the county to retain this because they don't want the voting rights basically here to override future decisions. They felt more comfortable with the way it is. I was just curious as to if we knew what Goleta had done in that regard.
I'm not aware of. I checked their board meeting minutes this week, and I didn't see anything on it. So I'm not aware that they have recently discussed this issue at the board level.
Okay. No, just a heads up, from staff standpoint, before it goes to council, I'd check that out in case the question does come up at council.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on consent calendar? So we're going to pull the meeting minutes for approval at the next.
So I recommend approval of consent calendar for items B and C.
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to sewer system management plan recertification.
Vice Chair Bernie, so we have with us Brad Vrare, who is our collection system superintendent. He's going to be presenting the SSMP today, which was scheduled for December, and because of the agenda, we had pushed it.
All right, good morning. As Joshua introduced me, I'm Bradley Rare. I'm the wastewater collection system superintendent. And I spent a good portion of my time in 2018 working on redrafting our SSMP, our Sanitary Sewer Management Plan. And so I'm here today to kind of highlight the main changes and then with the recommendation that we move forward to council for recertification. And so where this all started was in 2006, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted our statewide general waste discharge requirements, also known as WDRs, which basically required publicly owned sanitary sewer agencies to develop and implement an SSMP document. It also required us to report all SSOs to the state board using the online database called CWIX. And it also indicated that we needed to recertify that SSMP document every 5 years. So inside that WDR, the goal of the SSMP is really to make sure agencies have a plan and can properly schedule, manage, operate, and maintain their sanitary sewer system. The goal was also to reduce and prevent sanitary sewer overflows and mitigate those impacts. So many of you may have seen the SSMP before. If you have not, it's in paper copy, this giant document in front of me. It consists of 11 elements, as indicated up here on the screen. I'm going to talk about a few of them today in terms of what some of the changes were in the revised SSMP, but I wanted to provide kind of the list that we're required to respond to in terms of requirements to include in the SSMP. So one of the things I like to say is that it's a living document. The idea here is that it stays relevant and fresh. It doesn't just get looked at once every 5 years. And so we spend a lot of time looking back in our SSMP to help understand what we should be doing and making sure that we meet all the requirements of it. But like I stated before, the WDR requires it to be updated at a minimum every 5 years and then recertified by our governing board, which in our case would be City Council. It also must include any significant program changes. So if any time during that 5 years we make major changes to how we conduct our business, we need to include that in our SSMP update. And then it also has a term in there that requires us to audit ourselves every 2 years to really evaluate the effectiveness of the plan and evaluate the compliance with the plan requirements. And that kind of goes back to that living document. We don't want to steer too far off of that path. Even if we think it's good, we want to make sure that it's still meeting the effectiveness of why we started this in the first place. So kind of taking us back in time, this timeline was set up to kind of indicate where we are today. So back in 2006, the order required us to develop it. We had some time frames in there to write it and to get it certified. And so in 2008, we certified it at City Council. In 2012, we conducted our audit and added the consent decree work plans that were required for us to develop at that time. And then we reincorporated all those work plans and recertified at Council in June of 2013. Our audit in 2015 reevaluated those plans on how they were working for us at that time, and we finalized that document in December of 2015 with another final SSMP. So that brings us to 2018. We spent a significant amount of time in 2018, about June, reviewing all of our current work plans and modifying them for a couple purposes. Number one of the things in our old format was it wasn't very easy to pull out individual work plans and update them without having to recertify the entire document. And so we reformatted the document itself, and so it looks a little different now. The content is predominantly all the same, but it looks a little different, and it allows for us to make easier updates in the future. And then a lot had happened since the last time we looked at it. As you can see, the bullets below, we had the 2016 consent decree amendment that took effect in early 2017, and so we needed to capture those elements, and I'm going to talk about those specific terms that we updated. We did not hit our spill goal in 2017, so in the beginning of 2018, we also had to do a sanitary sewer reduction action plan, and those specific improvements that we were going to make, we needed to capture in the SSMP document. We also needed to capture the 2017 wastewater collection staff reorganization, and then we also spent most of 2017 updating our computerized maintenance management software, and so I'll talk about just the high points of what changed through that time frame. So, like I said, March 24th, 2017, our 2016 consent decree amendment went into effect. The highlights there are that we have 2 new cleaning programs that address roots in order for us to better attack that as a problem for maintaining our collection system. We also are required to document frequency changes. We need to remove the exfiltration abatement program that was part of the original consent decree. That went away with the amendment, so we don't have to address exfiltration abatement anymore.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
What are frequency change codes?
So, Commissioner Davis, this is something that we use when we are making a change to a cleaning frequency that doesn't match the algorithm that was adopted in 2012.
Great. No, thank you. That's perfect.
Yeah. And then last but not least, we also adjusted our capital replacement goal to 3.56 miles with the amended consent decree. It used to be 4.56 miles at a minimum because of the 2 miles of exfiltration abatement plus our normal 1% goal. And so with the changes, we wanted to make sure that was accurate. So our 2018 SSO Reduction Action Plan was filed March 31st, 2018. It also established some new cleaning frequencies that we felt would that would help us get to minimizing the chances of sanitary sewer spills. We also adjusted all 8-inch diameter and smaller sewer mains to a maximum of 36-month frequency. Prior to this, we would have allowed some of them to go to 60 months, and we don't feel that that was the right way, so we put that into the plan. And we also wanted to capture the on-call contractor support contracts that we went out to bid with and are supporting us in meeting our goals. So we wanted to include that in the revised SSMP. Like I mentioned, we finished up a staff reorganization for the wastewater collection system in 2017. We reclassified a few of our positions so that they could better meet the needs of the system. We basically created a field supervisor position and took one of our leads, and that is now one of the positions that helps us maintain our collection system. We also have a CCTV planner scheduler, like our cleaning planner scheduler, that looks at all CCTV data. And we have 2 project coordinators that help with our capital planning, as well as our sewer lateral inspection program. And last but not least, the upgrade to the computerized maintenance management system. Prior to 2017, we were using our Cartograph Navigator system, which was a standalone database, and it required a lot of paper to be floating around for us to maintain the system. So one of the things we wanted to do was capture how our workflows were working now with the mobile web-based Cartograph OMS system. We needed to update the workflows that were as part of our cleaning plan, our CCTV and our replacement plan, in order to document how the preventative maintenance and automation tools within the new software are being used. And then we also realized as we were auditing ourselves and reviewing the document that we really simplified how we do things since the original SSMP was filed in 2012 that addressed most of the consent decree requirements. So our next steps, it catches us up in June 2018. We evaluated the performance, we captured the changes, and we updated the document. And that brings us to today. We're here to inform, answer any questions you have, and seek policy direction so that we can move forward with recertifying at City Council. Right now, we are on schedule for the January 29th City Council meeting. And if everything goes well and we recertify, we would be looking at our next audit in June of 2020 to reevaluate to see how this document's working to outline how we do our business. So that brings us to our recommendation today that we would like to proceed to move to City Council to recertify the updated SSMP. And I'm really here to answer any questions you may have on if I went over that too quickly and didn't go into the details enough. I'd be happy to share any more information you have.
Thank you. Questions?
Like maybe
I appreciated the report. I thought it was perfect.
you could add to it. I don't know that Brad's had an opportunity to talk about it, but he's really adopted a lot of different technologies to optimize, I think, our wastewater system. And one of them is he's got all of our staff who are in the field now with iPads. So as they see issues, they are taking photos and documenting it right there, and it's going directly into our CMMS system, which is streamline a lot of the work that they're doing. And I don't know if you want to add any more to that, but it's, I think, helped to more quickly identify. And then so when they're out, for example, doing sonic testing of the lines and they find that there's a problem, it quickly gets in and can quickly be scheduled for TVing and cleaning so that we can get to the bottom of why, for some reason, that the line did not look or appear clean. But
Yeah, the way I would kind of capture the main change going on is it's not really a change of what we're doing, it's rather how we're doing it. And so that's an example of we're not changing how we clean, or what we're doing to clean sewer mains or to schedule them. It's rather how we're doing it, and we're utilizing technology to simplify it and to also make it a lot less paper. Although the document you can see is plenty of paper.
the state hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah, the state hasn't caught up.
I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting of last year. Where did we end up with our SSOs?
So we ended up at 7 spills for the year for the end of 2018, and that was below our limit of 8. So we're at, as a reminder, we're kind of at 8 now for the remainder of the consent decree, and so we hit our spill goal for last year, which is great. And I'm hoping that a lot of the things we've learned over the last few years, we can continue changing our processes in order to make sure that we don't get bit twice for the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
We have had one spill so far this year, and I think just even looking back on the spills that we had last year, really needing to start to turn our attention to those laterals. The spill that we recently had, a private lateral was cleaned. They did not capture the roots. They went down into our sewer system and ultimately got tangled up and caused a blockage and caused a spill in the public system. And so it really, now that we've, I think, gotten our city system in a good state of at least a plan for maintenance, now it's turning our attention to, which is pretty much, I think it's more than the public mains that are out there, it's the private laterals, and making sure that we can get a program now going to adequately maintain them and avoid these spills in the public because of these unmaintained private laterals. So we'll be bringing that to you hopefully before the summer to talk some more about that.
Great, thank you.
Question. Of the 7 spills, how many were maintenance related versus storm related?
So for 2018, we did not have any storm-related spills. All of our spills were due to other issues. Sometimes they come after a storm, and we try and do our best to determine, was rain an impact on that? But none of the spills we had last year that we certified were directly related to a storm event.
We did have some in 2017. I think there was 2 that were storm related, where we had just an overwhelming amount of rainfall get into the sewer system and cause some spills, but not last year.
My only comments are to thank you and the staff for what you've done in terms of system improvements. It's shown in terms of the reduction in spills over time. I love the fact that you're using technology to improve the system and streamline it in that regard. And the attention to laterals is one who replaced its lateral at one point. Thank you. That's also a really good thing. But just through the staff, really, we've seen the improvement here, and it needs to be recognized. And hopefully, council will give you that attention also when it goes up there. I'd make the motion that we recommend to council recertifying the updated SSMP.
I will second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion carries 3-0.
Great. Thank you
so
for your
much.
work.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
On to 6B, contract for consulting services of water distribution infrastructure plan.
Good morning, Chair Bierney and Commissioners, Councilmember Friedman. I am Matt Ward. I am the Water Distribution Superintendent, and I am here to go over the Water Distribution Infrastructure Plan. So the purpose of this plan is to address aging infrastructure. As you know, the city's water system is old, and particularly the distribution system is over 100 years old, and some of those components are still in service today. Another purpose for doing this study is to evaluate current and future demands, continue to improve water quality, identify potable water storage requirements, prioritize capital improvement needs planning for planning, and improve operational strategies.
So just to boil this down, this is the why. Why is this is needed? Why should we be spending this money right now? And really, as we have all these needs for maintenance of infrastructure, and I think we have a lot of questions, and really need to look at this as truly as what it is. It's a system. You can't be looking at a reservoir and, well, should you just replace it with the same size? Do we really, if we're replacing this main, should it be the same size? This study here is kind of going to look at the whole system and finally answer some of these questions. And what was remarkable in kind of looking back at this is it really hasn't been done, and it's just kind of mind-boggling that, you know, we've been working off of probably a plan. It started probably in the 1920s, and we've been kind of implementing that, and so much has changed. And so this we have a lot of expectations out of this plan to help us, what I believe to be more surgical with how we spend money and what we are focusing on. And so we're going to kind of walk through that, but that's basically the why for why we're moving forward.
Yeah, so let's get into some of those details. Some background: the population has, of course, gone up considerably since the city was first established, and most notably between the early 20s and current time, you can tell that the growth has been quite a bit. You can see most notably, though, at the top, things have kind of flattened out a little bit, and for the as far as the city's water system build-out goes, we're pretty well built out. This is a snapshot from 1921. What you'll see on the right up there is a map of the city, and there's 3 pressure zones. So the blue area is the downtown area over into the mesa, the hilltops above the mesa there, and the red in the lower left-hand corner, and then up top you'll notice another red zone, which is on that same hydraulic gradient, and then above that we have that yellow zone, which was actually served by Cold Springs Tunnel, and there was only 28 residents in that yellow area at that time. Some statistics on the area is it was 14 square miles. 50 miles of pipe, which is significant, but not nearly the 300 we have now, and 4 reservoirs, 3 pressure zones, 1 treatment plant. There was no retail meters, no pump stations, wells, or sample stations for water quality purposes. Fast forward to current, or in 2018, we're at 22 square miles, 300 miles of pipe, 14 reservoirs, 17 pressure zones, which you can see there's a lot more color in the map now on the right. 3 treatment plants, 27,000 meters, 13 pump stations, 8 wells, and 41 water quality sampling stations. So quite a bit of change. This is just a look at the network of fire hydrants. In 1921, we had 339 hydrants at the time. A major part of developing a water system is to be able to fight fires and, of course, serve water for residential and business needs. But this is just a snapshot of that at the time. This is current. We have over 25 fire hydrants now. I guess the takeaway with this slide is that we've built out quite a bit of our fire hydrant network. A lot of the focus now, too, has shifted more towards structure protection within the building. So we're focused more on fire sprinkler systems and suppression within the building. Over time, we've made major infrastructure and supply changes. We've drilled municipal wells. In 1964, we moved the water treatment operations from the Sheffield filtration building to the Cater water treatment plant. We also downsized the potable water reservoir from 50 million gallons at Sheffield down to 13 million gallons, which serves all the needs of the previous reservoir as well for potable services. And in 2010, we renovated the Ortega groundwater treatment plant, which produces about 2 million gallons per day when it's in operation. And in 2018, we recommissioned the Charles E. Meyer desalination plant, which produces about 3 million gallons per day into the low zone. We've also experienced significant changes in state water quality requirements. In 1974, there was the Safe Drinking Water Act, which you may recall it was a significant milestone for water systems across the country, and for our water system in particular, it required changes in our chlorination strategy. So we added chlorine dosing in the distribution systems in order to maintain residuals and make sure that the water had been properly disinfected at the point of use. In 2006, the disinfection byproduct rule began to come into effect, and it required that we reduce our disinfection byproducts, or at least monitor them and reduce them if needed. On the system side, it meant that we had to look at our strategy for how we store water, and ultimately we reduced our holding times in our reservoirs, trying to pass through water more on a daily basis rather than impounding more water there. And it also most recently with the drought, we actually took some of our reservoirs out of service, and we've studied the impacts of the system, in real time, and learned some things that we want to further with some modeling. We added pretreatment to Cater, the ozonation project, which you may be familiar with, and is pictured there on the right. You can see the ozonation system. We also installed aeration and mixing systems at 3 reservoirs, which helped us ventilate those reservoirs and off-gas any disinfection byproducts that may be formed. And we increased our sampling throughout our system to the 41 sample stations we have today. And I'm happy to report that we're meeting all of our monitoring goals there.
This single, if there was a single most influential, it's been the disinfection byproducts. And again, for our community and our local area, we have been really impacted by that because we have a lot of natural organics in our water, which with chlorine, they react and form these byproducts. And so we have been now spending millions of dollars upgrading Cater and making upgrades to our distribution system. And we've been adapting this old system that was built to store a lot of water. We've been adapting it to meet some of these regulations, and I think part of what I'm looking for and what we're going to accomplish out of this study is to really go in and say, okay, how should we, as we go forward, how should we be looking at our reservoirs and distribution system with a focus now specifically on how we adapt long-term to these water quality requirements?
Yeah, there's been lots of changes in how we distribute water that have been integrated over time through additions and looking holistically now at how they all interact and how we can improve is the goal behind this plan. And we'll get into that. So the Water Distribution Infrastructure Plan, it's going to incorporate survey of distribution asset elevations. So we're going to get all of our elevations in one survey datum. So that'll be helpful to take a snapshot of everything at one time. We're going to calibrate our existing hydraulic model system demand patterns. So get a heat map of the system and where our demands are at using detailed data points such as parcel numbers and things like that.
Madam Chair, in the report you talk about calibrating the city's water model. Is that the hydraulic modeling system you're talking about?
Commissioner Davis, that's correct, yes.
Thanks.
And we're looking for our consultants to provide recommendations to identify water storage needs, modify system operations, so how we distribute water through our pressure zones, and how we can improve water system resiliency and prioritize our capital improvement projects, because we do have a lot of projects, a lot of aged infrastructure that was installed, in some cases up to over 100 years ago and is still in service. And we know we have significant needs, but how we prioritize those are going to be important for how we conduct all the replacement.
Madam Chair, I hate to be just ask these little tiny questions. Improve water system resiliency. What do you define as resiliency?
That's a great question. So some of the things we've been looking at is consolidation of our storage centers, which means if you have less reservoirs, you have to make sure that the ones you have will be up to seismic standards and things like that. And so it's looking at those. We've also included in this study the loss of supply from the San Ynez River as a part of the resiliency component of the study.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Contract overview. It was a competitive selection process, and RFP has been identified for $540,000. And the consultants are Carollo Engineers and M&S Engineers. The plan is to complete this study by September 2019, so that way those recommendations can be incorporated into our next rate study. And we do plan to come back to Commission to report back on the findings from the plan. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you for the report. I think this is a much needed study that we're doing, and great history on 1921. Only all those fire hydrants, and you see how it exploded. So I like the graphics there. A couple quick questions I just had. The first, two, I'll combine them, is in why are you using just the 2018 water usage data rather than like a 3-year average? Because we could have anomalies this year due to the drought. And then are you taking into consideration any population growth that's going to be occurring over the coming couple years, especially in light of we have state housing mandates now that are becoming mandates, and so we're going to have more units. I know the water usage is lower per unit, but it's still something we need to account for over time. And then the other question is, in terms of our infrastructure for our groundwater, are you taking into any consideration that they're not depleted, but we've been using them a lot, so they're coming on and offline, and then also we're studying sea level rise, so how that would affect long-term groundwater, especially those closer to the beach?
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman. So we will be using data from a large period of time, so we're not just going to focus on 1 year. We're going to be focusing on how the cities had to adapt to drought. We're also working very close with our supply group to look at current and future demands, so we will incorporate all the work that we put into the general plan to adjust the water supply accordingly and to make sure that we use the appropriate data.
I think what we definitely want to get out of this study, and Ms. Dyer can talk a little about it too, is we need to have a water system that it can adapt to the changes in our water supply. So it needs to be a system that if we lose Tecolote Tunnel, we've got a system that with desal and groundwater can continue to provide the basic health and safety needs of this community. And so we're going to be looking at various scenarios in which groundwater wells, it's standard practice for us right now. They're currently off. And so we need to have a water system that can adapt to that, which, is really complicated when you really break it down. I mean, there are so many communities that really just rely on one source, like groundwater or one reservoir. And we have such a unique environment here where we get from so many different sources, and we have to have a water system that can adapt. And so Matt is a humble person, but this is an incredibly complicated water system. And there's a reason why it is, the state sees us as a grade 5 most complex water systems out there, as we do the number of pressure zones. And so this study will be definitely looking at that, because we want to retain that. And in fact, to the extent, how does potable reuse in the future fit into this? And again, I know that's years out, but we want the study to at least acknowledge if that, the study that we did, bringing that water into Laurel, how does it impact the water system and our plans going forward, so that is at least part of this long term, because this study is intended to look out 30 years. And that's why I just find it remarkable that we haven't done, or there hasn't been really anything extensive like this done before.
Yeah, so we were clear in the RFP that we needed to incorporate conjunctive use of the city supplies into the plan, and that we wouldn't prohibit future supplies in this plan.
Another question is process-wise. We sent out 8, received 3, and now we have recommendation to select Carollo. Can you tell me a little bit about your selection process? Did you rate the other 2, and who were they as to their responsiveness? Did you interview? How did you get to, and why Carollo?
Commissioner Davis, yes, so we did have a rating process in which Water Resources staff and engineering staff got together and reviewed the RFPs and reduced the 8 to 3, and then, yes, we ended up selecting 1. And it was based, a lot of that was based on the level of detail in which the proposal from Carollo came in and how they addressed the RFP for its completeness.
One of the things that we did recognize, we get really good service from Carollo, and we do appreciate that. But one of the things that did come across during this is the need for us to really try and get other consultants involved and knowledgeable. I mean, Carollo's been working with us and just has an incredible amount of knowledge about our system, which is great. It makes projects like this really straightforward, but really the need to continue to diversify. And so we are going to be looking to see how we can get others up to a similar level of understanding our system. I think the more consultants that we have that we can call upon is good for our business, because we do have a lot of needs going forward. And we certainly want to have a diverse consultant mix supporting us on that.
Thank you for that, because you're reading my mind. That's exactly why I asked the question. We do a lot of work with Carollo, and again, you need that diversity in the future, what have you. So you read my mind, answered the question. So thank you.
Thanks. And
M&S is part of that project as well?
Yeah.
How are they divvying up the work?
it's mainly they're doing the survey
Oh, okay.
component of the work, and then we do also have 2 other pump station projects that are currently in design, and those are being done by Kennedy Jenks. So we're trying to use all of our engineering firms as much as possible. Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
I had a question. So you talk about the system obviously is very complex, and they're going to recalibrate the hydraulic model. Do you guys maintain that internally, or how is that maintained and updated?
That's a great question, Commissioner Kelborn. We do update it from time to time. So internally, we've decided that we're going to continue to have the model updated as, on not necessarily an annual basis, but we're looking to update it periodically, so every few years, and really time it so that way it's done when we do make significant changes.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's a specialized
Right. So
ability to be able to run that model. I didn't know if you had that in-house capability or.
No, Commissioner Kilborn, we do have that expertise. Carson Wallard over here is a supervising engineer, and he actually runs the model quite a bit to run what I would consider kind of more straightforward stuff. And then he also, we use him to peer check the consultant's work. But we have had the consultant actually doing the major updates at this point because, yeah, they're in the model. They're doing it on a daily basis. But so trying to kind of hit that sweet spot because I think we've had a model of various complexities over the years, and we found that when we don't have some connection to it and the ability to at least operate it on some level and do our own stuff, we find that it really starts to fall apart. So we need to kind of maintain that balance of the consultant's expertise and also in maintaining the city staff's ability to get in it and run at least the more simple runs of the model and understand it.
Yeah, thanks for adding to that, Joshua. We do use the model regularly when we're identifying small in-house projects and stuff like that. And much like our bathymetric study, which we do every few years, but if we have a significant storm event, we will do a bathymetric survey, year to year if we see it necessary. That's kind of the same way that we're looking at updating our hydraulic model and calibrating on a regular basis.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Friedman. The historical pictures and look back were really interesting. I think help set the stage for why this is needing to be done. I do think it'd be helpful to have a little bit more on what some of those uncertainties are in the future that we might be looking at. So, for example, housing or different sources of water like potable reuse. I don't think we really talked about what this is going to look at, because it's going to be a very different in 30 years as it was 30 years ago. So it might just be helpful to get kind of an idea of what we might be taking into consideration going forward.
Vice Chair Bernie, it is a good question. I mean, I think in the package is to use the general plan, and it's what we have to go off right now, and so far we've been behind on the projections for growth. And I think the question is, I don't know, and Councilmember Freeman can chime in, is there any plan to update the general plan anytime because they see population changing significantly? I don't.
No.
Okay.
The real issue is how we meet our housing mandates, which is within the general plan. So it comes down to how we get housing built. That's how we're dealing with it right now. There may be in the future, we do look at it periodically, but as of right now, we're not planning to open up the general plan.
Yeah, and I think that for most of this development going down in the low zone, we're probably most well suited to take growth there. I think if it was going to be up at the top part of our system, it would be a different scenario. But I think the infill and where general plan is kind of laid out, we certainly will be looking at. And I think the sea level rise is going to continue to be an interesting discussion. Fortunately, for most of the stuff, aside from desal, most of it is out of the critical stuff is out of that area. But we'll certainly make sure that the report addresses any issues that we may see with sea level rise because that information is now out there and being developed. So.
Thank you. And then I'm not sure if it's a typo, but in the recommendation, you've got $490,958, and then in the estimated total project cost, I guess I'm not sure.
This usually includes internal staff time too. In that, I'm not at the look row. We'll take a look at that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was consistent across. I think.
50,000 for potential extra services. Are
Yeah.
you asking? Are you going to be asking council?
Oh, and then there's city staff
Yeah,
as well. Okay, I see it
you've
now.
got that in there.
Okay. So it's just, my mistake.
Yeah.
I was just not following it. Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have a motion for recommendation?
I'll do it.
Sure, I'll recommend that we
Okay, we've
Move
got
this to council for approval.
Commissioner Kilborn moves and
Second.
Davis seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much.
Good
Thanks,
luck.
Matt.
Thank you.
Brings us to drought update. Ms. Dyer.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Councilmember Friedman. I will be giving the drought update for today. My name is Kelly Dye. I'm the Water Supply Manager. And so we'll go through the drought status, the demand status, water supply status, and water supply strategy. Our rain totals for the current water year as of 7:45 a.m. this morning, we had 15.42 inches at Gibraltar. That is above normal for this time of year.
I do want to note, because I was the one who jumped in here this morning to update this presentation, because as of yesterday, it was at 10.38. We got 5 inches of rain last night at Gibraltar. It was huge. It was a big night.
Yeah.
It was so well needed. Again, the whole watershed, Old Man Mountain, all that area got significant water last night. Kind of what I would consider more the historical rainfall, where we get a couple inches down here and they get, double, triple that up there. Kachuma, unfortunately, got like 0.08 inches. But what matters is what fell in the watershed and is ultimately coming down. So big night. Yeah.
Yes.
Excited.
Very excited. Kind of skipping ahead, but we do anticipate Gibraltar will probably spill sometime today. And then Kachuma, we haven't seen much change in storage yet, but it's kind of a longer response time. So they think, the projections are saying that it should go up about 7 feet in the next 24 hours. And then I think it was 12 feet roughly in the next week or so. So that's actually a pretty good chunk of water, ranging between 10 to 20,000 acre feet of inflow to Kachuma. So it's just going to be a slower lag time for all the water to get there. But it is very good news for us. And then here downtown in Santa Barbara, we are above normal. So this is great news. I don't really get much opportunity to report that we're above normal rainfall. So we're very happy about that. I know, right? This is the drought monitor that's prepared by federal agencies. Our area is categorized as a severe drought condition. You can see the entire state really is showing relatively dry conditions. So hopefully these storms will change that. But as of right now, this is the current status. Our region, we're just coming off of the 7 driest consecutive years on record. So we're now in the 8th year of drought. We still have our drought emergency declaration in place. Once we have more information on how our supplies change as a result of winter rains, we'll come back and reassess probably March or April timeframe what our drought declaration and conservation targets need to be.
I hate to go backwards, but I forgot to ask a question, but it's a good place for me to do it. On the integrated regional water management plan, when I looked at the issues, the management issues, neither Carpinteria or City of Goleta put water supply issues in there. Did they know something we don't know, or they just didn't get it?
I can't really speak on their behalf on why they didn't put that in there.
It just stands out. Whatever. I mean, here we are. We're in a drought, big time drought. Everybody's got water supply, and these 2 big agencies on the South Coast don't recognize water supply as an issue. I forgot to ask that question earlier, but I got a chance to put it on the record.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a good question. Certainly. This is the 3-month look ahead. Although this is from December 20th, we tried to find a more updated version. I don't know if that has to do with the government shutdown or not. But as of December 20th, they're showing equal chances for our area. It's equal chances of above normal, below normal, or average rainfall. So really anything could happen. Demand status, we had a 30% reduction in water use for the month of December. That's as compared to our pre-drought demands. And our 12-month running average is about 29%. So it's very close to our target of 30%. We continue to monitor this. Of course, we would like to see it at the 30%, but it is very close. It's harder to conserve in the winter months because there's typically less irrigation use especially when it's raining. There's less discretionary use that they can cut back versus in the summertime when people are used to watering outside. That's a lot easier to cut back. So we normally see greater than 30% conservation in the summer and less than 30 in the winter, and it sort of averages out. Water sales, this is our revenue projection, something we wanted to track just to see if there's any shortfalls in our projections. At this point, we do not have any concerns about shortfalls. Our revenues have been tracking as planned generally for the last year or so. Water supply status. So Gibraltar currently is at about 60% of capacity, although that can quickly change. So by tomorrow it might be spilling. We'll have to see. Water quality continues to be an issue. We do have higher turbidity in TOCs, particularly after large storm events. And so we anticipate we might have to shut down diversions for temporarily until some of that filters out and settles. But we have been fortunate. We've been diverting since last May about 4 acre-feet per day, pretty consistently. It is less than what we would normally divert just because the water quality after the Thomas fire, but we were able to get some water. As far as I know, we're still diverting. I have not heard that we've shut down, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have to following a major storm.
Yeah, given Gibraltar's the sediment loading on it, I mean, over the last 2 years, we've lost about 20% of the capacity in it. But it is the depth of Gibraltar when it's full is about 20 feet, and right now, I think when I checked this morning, it was like 5 or 6 feet from spilling. So it's a very quick to fill reservoir in that sense. So we'll be watching that closely, and of course, we'll likely be doing another bathymetric survey this summer to see how much capacity was lost, because I imagine with 5 inches of rain last night, it was probably bringing down quite a bit of sediment with it.
So after the storm things settle, do we expect that our water quality will be better than it was before the rain? After it settles? I mean, not tomorrow, but in a couple weeks, let's say it stays dry. Could we maybe potentially divert more than 4 acre-feet?
That's a good question. It's hard to have a crystal ball on these things. I think the impacts of the Thomas fire will probably last at least a few years. So I wouldn't expect it to be crystal clear, great water this year. But we'll have to just see. I mean, it's hard to predict it.
I think you can say it'll be better than last year, but I think it's a good point. Like, it'll depend on how long, and having 15 inches of rain now in the watershed means that we're probably going to have more consistent flows now in, because before when it would rain, as soon as it stopped raining, the creeks would dry up. But now we've gotten to that point of saturation. The creeks will keep flowing. That water typically gets a lot better week out from the storm event. And, if we get another one, it'll kind of mix it up again. But that's when we really get the benefits, start flushing that water through the reservoir, bringing in the clean stuff. And hopefully you're right. As soon as we can, we want to start increasing those diversions from Gibraltar.
So 5 acre-feet.
Yes, 5 acre-feet, yes.
Kachuma, as of yesterday, was at about 32% of capacity. As I mentioned, that is anticipated to go up by about anywhere from 10 to 20,000 acre-feet in the next week or so. And the city's portion of that storage is 8,400 acre-feet. We do have the most water in storage compared with the other Kachuma member units. Our account is the largest. We've saved up the most, which also puts us at risk of more evaporative losses. The way that those are allocated is based on your proportional share of storage. So without significant inflows, this was kind of an old, we put this presentation together before this large storm. Without significant inflows, COME was going to have to be making a decision on the emergency pump facility. The notice to proceed would have had to have been by this spring for it to be operational by fall. I think COME will be updating the projections based on this recent storm, and so I think we might get a little bit of reprieve on the timing of the barge, but we don't know exactly when yet because they'll have to rerun those projections.
And regarding inflows to Kachuma, if I remember correctly, we don't actually start accumulating any water unless the downstream rivers are flowing.
Correct. Yeah, there's it's called the live stream condition, where there's certain checkpoints along the river that have to be flowing in order for it to be considered Kachuma project water. The idea behind that was that the Kachuma project was really only supposed to capture water that would otherwise have gone to the ocean when it was constructed. That was the concept, and so that's why we only get to accumulate water when we have very wet conditions.
And are we there yet?
I have not checked. I would guess we're. You don't think so? We'll have to check. We haven't looked recently.
Okay.
I do have to. There was an article that came out last week. I think it was written by one of the board members for the San Ynez district. And again, one of the things that seems to omit from the conversation when they're talking to the community is that the water that the South Coast agencies are able to divert is water that would have ended up in the ocean. And that's, they seem to always be absent from this discussion that, you know, the South Coast agencies are taking water out of the San Ynez River. But truly, like this storm, all the inflows, this will all be attributed and go into the downstream users' accounts because this water likely wouldn't have made it to the ocean. And so keep wanting to make that reminder that's out there that this isn't, you know, the way that this whole reservoir was managed and set up was really to protect the downstream users and their water rights that they have. And so just want to keep getting that out there, that information out there.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to do as well, because as much as it's exciting that Gibraltar got some rain and overall the community got rain, that's always a positive. I think we need to remember that we are still in a drought and that this water that's coming into Kachuma right now is not ours. Even the water that's going from Gibraltar into Kachuma is not ours. So thank you.
So for imported water, the 2019 allocation is currently 10%. The state has been updating the models. The latest one showed that they might bump it up to 14%, although they have not done that yet. So we're still working off of a 10% allocation for this year, which is quite low. At the end of the calendar year, the city's carryover of state water at San Luis Reservoir was about 338 acre feet. There was no risk of spill for that water because we were actually able to deliver all of it this January. So San Luis is relatively full. It's an operational reservoir. It doesn't have any natural inflows to it. But last I checked, it was at 1.5 million acre feet, I believe, out of the 2 million. And DWR has said it may or may not spill. If it does spill, it would probably be mid-February. As of right now, the city is planning to shut down our deliveries of state water to Kachuma for 2 months, for February and March. There's various reasons for doing that, but one of them is that there's a lot of uncertainty in our supply condition right now in terms of whether it's going to improve. And with the very low state water allocation, we would be challenged in trying to effectuate the exchange with ID1, where this was a mutually beneficial agreement that we have with ID1, where we send them our state water. In exchange, they give us their Kachuma water. Saves us money because we don't have to pump the water all the way to Kachuma, and it also helps them because they didn't have to build a treatment plant in order to get their Kachuma water. So we could, if the conditions remain dry, we still in a drought, we're going to be pursuing supplemental water purchases. That would help us effectuate the exchange this summer. But if our conditions locally improve, then we may not move forward with a supplemental purchase, and we wanted to reserve some of that 10% allocation for the exchange. It saves us money if we can do that. It also helps the amount of evaporative losses that we're taking on at Kachuma. Since we do have the most amount of storage at the lake, we're taking the biggest hit on evaporation right now. So we're kind of wanting to balance that out with where everyone else is in terms of their storage. And at this point, we don't think that shutting down our deliveries for 2 months would have any impact on the barge timing. What would have happened if we had continued to maximize and push through our deliveries for the next few months, we would have run out of water by, say, April and May timeframe. So there would have been a gap in deliveries anyways before we actually did the transfer of water with for supplemental water purchases, which is usually in the summertime. So we're essentially just shifting that gap earlier. And also with the inflows to Kachuma coming in, that's also good news in terms of barge timing. So this, I think, is what I would recommend is shutting down deliveries for 2 months, and then we'll reassess where we're at in March on whether we pick them up again.
I think this is an important point, just in case the county in the past wants to beat us over the head on this one. This makes good sense to do this. And it really, if they choose to make a big deal out of this, it just underscores how they don't understand the water supply aspects of it. But this is kind of balancing those needs, and we do need to effectuate that exchange agreement that we have. And we really have, as you can see, very little water sitting in St. Louis right now to do that. So I do think this is a...
Well, and I will say, the exchange agreement is a good faith effort. We're not obligated to change our delivery schedules to meet ID1's needs, but we're trying to, there's no harm to the city from doing this, and I think it's just a good neighbor issue for why I would recommend it for us, because it doesn't really harm us in any way to just shift when this gap in deliveries is occurring.
So that's not going to have any impact on our pipeline capacity later in the year, is it?
No, it won't.
Because it's so low.
What's going to happen is our capacity will become available for others if they want to send more state water right during that February and March timeframe. But then in April, we still have our reserved capacity that we're entitled to, that we get first priority over.
Just so I understand, if we didn't do this and we took our 10% basically now, and then when the summer comes, we'd have to go and get purchase supplemental water to fulfill the exchange with ID1.
So we would, if it remains dry, we would want to purchase supplemental water, which could be used to effectuate the exchange. We're not obligated to go buy water just to meet the ID1 exchange obligation, though. So if we ran out of water and we didn't have anything to send, we don't have to, we're not obligated to go buy it or make that happen. So there's no obligation to the city to change our delivery if it's not in our best interest, but it does provide us some financial benefit, and I think certainly benefits them if they can get their Kachuma water. But there have been years, I will say, when earlier in the drought, when I think it was Goleta Water District was trying to push their water all the way through to Kachuma as quickly as they could, and they ran out of water and were not able to effectuate the exchange with ID1. So that has happened in the past.
And in that situation, ID1 has the ability to take back and reverse flows of water from Kachuma back to the district, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have to build a treatment plant in order to do that, so it's expensive. They don't want to do that, I don't think.
Would that roll over to subsequent years, or is it just on an annual basis?
It's just an annual. Yeah, it's just an annual.
But like if they didn't get it, like in like that past example, if they didn't get it that year, do they roll it over to the next year and bank it, basically?
They can carry over their water at Kachuma.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what would happen is if they weren't able to do the exchange with state water, they would be banking their water at Kachuma
got it.
until
They'd still have it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in terms of supplemental water, we are still working towards supplemental purchases with Mojave Water Agency. It's basically the same deal that was done last year, which was one of the best we had seen throughout the drought. It's about $320 per acre foot for the purchase cost. It's a 4-to-1 exchange, meaning that for every 4 acre feet we purchase, we have to give them back one acre foot over the next 10 years. And we'd also have to pay for the delivery cost of that return. So $250 per acre foot to return about 700 acre feet over the next 10 years. This purchase would maintain deliveries to Kachuma through spring of next year. However, I have CCWA is well aware that our supply condition might change, and so this water is extremely important to us if it remains dry, but there's a chance we may be reducing how much we purchase from the 20. It might be something less than 2,800. It might be nothing at all if we get substantial inflows to Kachuma. So we have some time. There's really no obligation right now, but March timeframe is when we'll have to make a decision.
Madam Chair, maybe you said it. Is the 2,800 acre feet, is that over the water year, or is that a purchase which we could draw over multiple years?
That transfer would occur this summer, and we would have to have it delivered by the end of the calendar year.
Great.
Our current water debt is about 3,700 acre feet. That's still fairly manageable level. We'll be looking to pay that down in wetter years. 1 year earlier in the drought, City of Santa Maria had some extra water that we purchased to pay down our water debt. That was 2,000 acre feet. And so we'll continue to look for those opportunities in the future to try and pay that down. Given the 10% allocation this year, there's not much opportunity to pay down our debt this year. Groundwater, we continue to monitor our seawater intrusion and water levels. We are currently resting our basins and exercising our wells regularly in case they need to come on for any emergency purpose. And if conditions remain dry, we will plan to bring about 4 wells online this spring. Desal project continues to operate in full production. It is producing the target goals that we've been looking for. And on January 29th, there will be a presentation to council regarding the draft term sheet for the water sales agreement with Montecito Water District. At that time, we'll be seeking approval of the term sheet and direction to move forward with completing the agreement itself. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say on that.
Yeah, we'll be meeting with the Council Ad Hoc Committee next Tuesday to touch base with them. But what I think will be nice for the council and the public is that term sheet, I don't call it, will be made publicly available. So at the end of the month, when that council agenda goes out, those term sheets will be a term sheet, which basically lays out all the major points of the agreement. And at this time, we have consensus with the Montecito Water District staff, and so they will be taking it to their board at the same time. And so I think that's really been the first time that we've got the public and the Water Commission and the council will get to see the full details of what's in there. And again, those are the major points, and then the water sales agreement will then be all the little details that kind of bind that together into an agreement. I will should see that coming up.
And our water supply strategy, no significant changes since last month. This will be updated as we get more inflows from our storms, but it currently represents the 20% allocation from Kachuma and the 10% allocation of state water. So hopefully things improve, and we'll come back later this spring with our plan and strategy for filling that gap in 2021 in the case we don't get any inflows. And that's it for the drought update today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer. Any questions from the No? Sounds like you've covered it. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to water agency update. Back
Sure.
to you.
Sure. This is just a periodic update. I'll report out some of the major issues being discussed at our JPA, Joint Powers Agencies, which the city is a member of. So starting with the Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board, which is a JPA consisting of 4 member units. It's the South Coast member units. ID1 has withdrawn. Let's see. So ID1, the separation agreement was signed by all the parties, and ID1 has agreed to pay certain past due amounts to COMB. I believe invoices were sent. However, we received a letter from ID1 saying they were withholding payment pending more detailed information behind the charges. So continuing to work with COMB and figure out what's going on there to try and collect payment from ID1. COMB hired Woodard and Kern, a consultant, to perform a Lake Kachuma water quality and sediment management study. And our city staff have continued to support the data collection effort with all of our water quality and sediment management that we've done at Gibraltar. I think will feed into that study as well. The decision on the emergency pump facility we already discussed previously. That was likely to occur in March for the notice to proceed, although the rainfall that we've been getting may postpone that decision. And we had talked earlier about reclamation cost overruns. So this year the city paid down reclamation's FY17 deficits. That was about $100,000. We paid them down now to try and avoid any interest that accrues on them. It's kind of an interesting deal where reclamation goes over budget and then they tell you after the fact and then charge you interest for the amount they went over. So we do have remaining about $500,000 of deficits from previous years that they have informed us of. We would like to pay those down as quickly as possible. We had budgeted this year for the emergency pump project. So if that can get delayed for any reason into next fiscal year, we could use those funds to pay down our deficits this year. But we'll have to wait until we have more information on the timing of the emergency pump facility before we decide on that. Otherwise, we would go back to council asking for more funds to pay for both the emergency pump project and the reclamation deficits. Kachuma Conservation and Release Board. This is a JPA formed to protect Kachuma water rights, and it's 3 of the South Coast member agencies. It's the city, Montecito, and Goleta. Carpinteria decided to withdraw from CCRB, so what happens is the other 3 agencies end up splitting the costs that Carpinteria would otherwise pay. I certainly do think that they're getting benefit from the work that we're doing and paying for at CCRB. So would love to have them back in the organization at some point. We are still awaiting a final water rights order for the Kachuma project. No date has been set, but that could come out by the first quarter of 2019. Although it's really been the same story. I report out when we think it might be coming, it just continues to get delayed.
Is the government shutdown affecting the agencies we're dealing with on this?
It is to some degree. So the state water rights order is not affected, but the Kachuma biological opinion process has been. The reclamation staff have been continuing to work because they were funded through some other bond measure through the end of September of 2019, I think it was. But when you're doing a consultation with NIMFs, they are relying on other agencies, and I believe the NIMF staff has not been reporting to work, so they have been slowed down in that regard. They're able to do their own work, but they're not able to coordinate with the other agencies right now. So as far as the biological opinion process, the previous proposed action was canceled and the whole consultation process was restarted. And a new proposed action was presented to NIMS in mid-October, fairly recently. And now reclamation staff are working with CCRB and the downstream interests, a joint effort to develop a revised biological assessment supporting that new proposed action. And Reclamation intends to deliver the draft biological assessment to NIMS in mid-March. At that point, Reclamation or NIMS would formulate a draft biological opinion. So it is conceivable it could come out this year, but we'll have to wait and see how the process goes. CCRB and the downstream interests are working very closely with Reclamation on this process.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes. Are there any statutory limits on response for NIMS? Or can they have as much time as they want to take?
My understanding is there is a limit, but it can be easily extended with mutual agreement with Reclamation. As for Central Coast Water Authority, which we have Councilmember Friedman here who sits on the board of CCWA, that's a JPA consisting of 8 member agencies. Is our purveyor of state water. I attended the operating committee meeting on January 10th, and the next board meeting is January 24th. Some of the highlights from the operating committee meeting were the state water contract reassignment, which was on our agenda this morning. So DWR notified the county in writing that they are willing to accept the assignment of the state water contract from the county to CCWA. And this item we were informed very recently, is now scheduled for the County Board of Supervisors on February 5th. And at that point, county staff will be asking for direction from the board on whether to continue working on this and developing materials to bring back to the board at a later time for consideration. So that's this letter of support that was on the agenda today. Will be going to council actually on January 29th. We've moved up the date to try and get that letter in before the February 5th Board of Supervisors meeting. And I think at this point it will be an administrative item at council where we're kind of just refreshing the discussion we had a couple of years ago, very similar PowerPoint and talking points. But you're welcome to attend that or the Board of Supervisors meeting. I think that's a good point, Commissioner Davis, you had earlier about reaching out to the other South Coast member agencies and seeing where they're at. Yeah, if you
could do that. Just to take a second, could you give me like the voting rules for dummies at CCWA so I understand that whole voting by percentage rule? And I mean simplified.
Basically, City of Santa Maria +1 can swing the vote. So, for example, yeah, so it would be, could be Santa Maria plus ID1. And then, I will say in the past, we've had a very good working relationship at CCWA. There have been times when Santa Maria voted on something that the South Coast member agencies didn't want to participate in. For example, there was a time when to pre-fund some of the work towards the Delta fix on the planning and design work. And they ended up recognizing that South Coast agencies voted no and they voted yes, so they ended up covering our costs. We ended up not having to pay for it. And I think even at the state level, there's pretty significant recognition that some people want in and some people want out. So what I've seen is more and more attempts to make things flexible. They're working on what's called the water management amendments to the state water contracts, which basically allows an outright purchase rather than having to do an exchange. So for agencies who are interested in, offloading some of the costs and also, the benefits of Cal Water Fix, they could find somebody else who is interested in, taking on more of the state water. So there's more and more opportunities, I think, for flexible management in the future and opting in and opting out.
Going back to the simplified voting for dummies, is the percentages based upon percentage of the contract of the pipe? I'm sorry. Is it the percentage of the pipe? Is it the cost? Is it the population? What's the percentage? How do they get essentially their larger chunk?
The percentages are based on their proportional share of the water entitlement. So it's called a table
And
A.
so what's our share?
Ours is, we have 3,300 acre feet of table A water out of around 45,000.
Okay. Thank you.
The things that kind of, at least our experience so far, is that Santa Maria is a city, and I put my plug in there for cities. There's a little more stability to how cities operate, because they have to operate on multiple levels, not just focused on water and solely on water, like maybe we see with more of the volatility that you see with maybe some of the special districts. We've had nothing but good experiences so far with Santa Maria acting in the best interest of kind of looking at CCWA and wanting to see it be successful.
We have. It's been, I think, a very well-run agency, and we do have a history at CCWA of, the supplemental water purchase program, for example, where some agencies wanted to participate and others didn't. And so we've already got some of these structures in place where recognizing that some people want in and some people don't. And I think that there's a future for that to continue at CCWA. Contract extension amendments. So this was the amendments of the state water contract, which expires in 2035, I believe it is. So right now what's happening is whenever we have major costs on the state water project, like the Oroville spillway issue and other major capital improvements, we only have a 17-year period for payment of those costs, and the extension is proposing a 50-year extension, which helps to spread out the costs and over a longer period of time. And there's quite a few benefits which are fairly complicated to go into, but I will be inviting Ray Stokes, the CCWA executive director, to give a presentation on it, because they are moving forward. Sometime this spring, likely, we'll be inviting CCWA to come to Water Commission and Council. Given the delays in the contract reassignment, the county will be making the decision on the contract extension amendments. So we would be asking our council to send a letter of support approving them, and that letter would go to the county.
Ms. Dyer, did they make any progress on the exchange component with supplemental water purchases? Did that get
that's part of the water management amendments, which are a separate process. The contract extension, the financial extensions, the negotiations were complete quite a few years ago, actually. And then the more recent negotiations have been on trying to get rid of the exchange component requirement and being able to actually just sell your water without having to return it. That has been underway and will follow as a separate amendment. So more to come, right? They'll probably expect in the next couple months we'll come back with the contract amendment extension or contract extension amendments.
Councilmember Friedman, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
That was a good update. We didn't have a December meeting, so I've got the update from you right now, but we do have the meeting next week, and the issue with the reassignment, it's a major issue for us because at the agencies, we are responsible for our water. We're financially responsible for our purchases, and the county doesn't have that. So one of the issues previously of why the county had it was as a backup. Should there be a default, the county had the ability to levy a tax to make that up. And there's a benefit actually to the city of Lompoc of actually all of them, because if we move to us holding the contract, the member agencies of CCWA, Lompoc isn't a member agency, so any taxing authority in the extreme case would be that Lompoc wouldn't be on the hook for water they don't use. So there is an incentive for some residents of the county who aren't even part of this project to have that. So that's the only other nuance here that we're going to be talking to the supervisors about. And the last thing I'll say is when Ray Stokes comes to give the presentation, there's a lot of information there. My head's always spinning at those meetings. They're really complex, and it's a lot of great information, and it's quite fascinating when you take into state water and then our water and our diversity and how we get water. It's mind-boggling, but it's really fun, actually, to see how it all fits together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so subcommittee reports.
Sea Level Rise Committee, last month I reported on the vulnerability assessment. Eric Friedman and I sit on that committee, as well as Kristen Snedden, as you all know. Anyway, last month I reported on the vulnerability assessment, which had been released publicly. And Joshua had come to our meeting and made a presentation as to the at least superficial 30,000-foot level appearance of impacts upon the wastewater system and El Estero plant. And I'm wondering, Joshua, if you had time in the next agenda, 15 minutes to do that for us. I know for me it was really educational as to where the vulnerabilities are in that regard. Just the same presentation, if you could fit that on the next agenda, if we're all going to be here. Because it's, for me, it was really educational, because we have a sewer line that feeds both not just the Mesa, Las Positas Valley, but all of Outer State Street, which runs right along the bike path down at West Beach, which is a real major issue. It's a really good presentation. If he does that, then it would really help all of us at least have an understanding what the issue is. And then this week's Independent, read it. It's the main article, and I don't have to say anything else. So it's pretty well done in that regard.
Any other subcommittee meetings? No. Do we have an update on when we might be doing the outreach subcommittee? I know with changing of management, that was...
Yeah, I don't have a date for you, but they had a meeting this week. I wasn't able to attend. I got hijacked for something else, but it is moving forward, the renaming of El Estero, and we'll can bring back for more discussion.
Okay.
Sure.
That's fine. Last item on the agenda, Water Resources Manager's Report. Joshua.
Yeah, so I just wanted a few things. You have the document in front of you. Take a few minutes to look through it. I can just talk about some other stuff that's going on. The Strategic Energy Plan is headed to Council in February. And as I understand it, it's to kind of update. It's to share publicly a draft of some of the recommendations, and then ultimately taking that feedback, it'll come back for approval. I think what's most impactful to us is there is some recommendations in there to create an energy division, which, I support. I think we've even talked about the need for someone specifically in water resources, and that's what I've been talking with them about is if this goes forward, I'd like to see a dedicated person in this energy division that is focused primarily just on water resources. We have plenty of, demands for energy and potentials to create energy. And so hopefully when that goes forward, you'll have an opportunity to comment on it, and we can get those resources, I think, assigned, because it is important. There's no way we're going to meet the 100% by 2030 goal without dedicating those. And, I go back and forth, but with this idea that this person really needs to act as though they're in water resources, because they need to be embedded side by side with our staff. And so as we were talking about specifically, we need to do this project to address water quality, there's this person sitting at the table saying, well, how does that fit into our energy strategic plan? And how can we either mitigate or how can we potentially produce renewables out of this project. And it's difficult when you have your operators are in there focused mainly on meeting certain regulations for water quality. How do you also bring in? So I think that we've been successful over the last couple years now, probably the last 5 years. Alelia, who has been the staff person with facilities, has embedded her staff in water, has embedded herself in water resources, which has been immensely successful. She sits side by side when we talk about workload, and staff see her as part of the water resources team, which has been really incredible and has led to a lot of innovative ideas coming forward within water resources. So I'm excited, and hopefully we can continue that and get, Alelia has the whole city to worry about, and getting someone hopefully with a similar caliber to focus solely on helping water resources, because I think water resources needs to do a strategic energy plan coming out of this that's just focused primarily on our section, because we have probably the most to benefit and the most to provide to the community in that sense. So more to come on that. We'll be back next month to talk wastewater rates. I will put that first thing on the agenda, and we'll be talking about probably prioritizing it if there's things that can push if that conversation goes long. But hopefully we'll have a lot to check in on. We'll be meeting with the ad hoc committee on wastewater rates sometime between now and then too. We'll try and get that on the calendar. Keep that effort moving. And then, of course, Galen is doing a fantastic job getting her up to speed as the acting wastewater manager, but we will be getting a recruitment going for that. And we'll likely be reaching out to Water Commission to see if anybody's interested in sitting on that selection panel. So.
Where are we with the pilot meter project that's going place? I think my complex actually had one that came in the other day, but I'm not sure if it's the pilot meter or if it was just maintenance.
I'm so glad you're asking. What we're doing with that, starting on Monday, our staff started deploying the AMI units. And basically, we have AMI capable meters, so this is basically plugging in the antenna and receiver units. And so they're deploying those, and the plan is to finish that up by the end of the month. But we did hold off on sending out information because there really isn't anything for anybody to do yet. So sometime in mid-February, we hope to get something out to everyone saying that, we've installed this feature. You now can go online and look at your water usage. So that's general rule, but we're deploying right now about 200 of these units. By the end of the month, we'll have those out. I think as of yesterday, they had at least 40 already deployed. So it's going pretty quick. And so that's been good too. We're seeing how this deployment works, how challenging it is. So yeah, we're really excited about it.
Since it was my complex, now that you confirmed it, you guys did a great job because the notice was to have the water off from like 9 to 1, and you're done in like 2 hours. So it was great where you had it done a lot quicker than the notice. So our water was off a lot shorter, which made us happy too.
I wonder if that would make it something different, because mostly with the AMI deployments, we don't have to turn the water off, but there might have been something unique about, because that was a complex, right? Yeah, there might have been something unique about that.
Any other questions? No? Then we will call the meeting to close at 10:34.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.